This video is brought to you by Nebula. Now, we've heard a lot about Reform UK recently. They've been in the news for their impressive polling, specifically as the polling is now similar to that of the Liberal Democrats, at about 10%. This has led to talk that they could take votes away from the Conservatives, making their inevitable defeat at the next election potentially even worse. However, while a lot of time has been dedicated in the press to the impact that Reform UK could have in the election, relatively little attention has been paid to who Reform are and what kind of party they are. So in this video, we're going to have a look at where Reform UK have come from, Reform's main players, and what sort of policies they advocate for. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. Let's start by having a brief look into the history of Reform UK. The party actually has its roots in the Brexit Party, which itself was started by Nigel Farage following his resignation as leader of UKIP. In essence, Farage wanted a way to get back into mainstream politics without being attached to the plethora of scandals that had occurred at UKIP since his departure. As such, the Brexit Party was born. It was very much designed around him and became a very successful single-issue party. The Brexit Party campaigned and won the 2019 EU parliamentary elections and pushed the Tories into attempting to achieve a harder Brexit. Once Brexit was done, though, the party no longer had anything to advocate for. Instead, at the end of 2020, Farage announced that he had applied to the Electoral Commission to rename the party to the Reform Party. Initially, the party's policies were centred around their opposition to coronavirus lockdowns. In 2021, Farage resigned as leader and businessman Richard Tice took over as leader. And, well, he has a pretty unusual management style. Reform UK, unlike other major UK parties, is registered as a limited business. Most other parties are set up as unincorporated associations, meaning that the party is effectively run by its members in one way or another. They're not run for profit, and there are not any shareholders. Now, to an extent, it's understandable why Farage originally set the party up this way. Back in 2019, it was not known whether Theresa May would indeed finish Brexit, and Farage had to move fast to get candidates on the ballot paper for the upcoming European elections. And well, Farage has been stung before. As the leader of UKIP, he was constantly fighting with other members of the party and the party's bureaucratic structures. So it made sense to establish a new party where there weren't the same problems. However, as they're now trying to pitch themselves as the party that could replace the Conservatives as the party of the right in the UK, it's fair to believe that they'll need to democratise in the near future, especially as their members, who each pay £25 to join the party, have no say over the direction of the party itself. Right now, the leader of the party is Richard Tice, but he's only serving at the discretion of the reported majority shareholder Nigel Farage, who also has the title Honorary President, and who owns 8 of the 15 shares in the company. Farage is also listed on Companies House as the only person with significant control. Now, according to a report by Tom McTague at Unheard, the only thing providing some kind of balance against Nigel Farage is the fact that Tice provided £1 million of his own money as a loan to the party. If Tice and Farage fell out, then Tice could demand his money back, which in turn would damage the party. So, the Reform Party is certainly different to other parties in its structure. But is it different in terms of its policies? Well, as leader, Tice developed Reform's policy platform from its lockdown days. And late last year, the Reform Party published what they called their Contract with You, which is, in essence, a manifesto in all but name. And, well, this manifesto is as radical as you'd expect from a party named Reform. On healthcare policy, they promised that they'd cut the NHS waiting list to 0 within only 2 years of coming to power. Now, to do this, they'd give NHS patients a voucher for fully funded private treatment if they could not see a GP within 3 days, a consultant within 3 weeks, or have an operation within 9 weeks. They've also promised to provide an exemption for the basic rate of income tax to 2 million health and social care workers for 3 years, in an attempt to try and retain and attract NHS staff. Now, the rest of Reform's policies seem to fall into 3 broad categories: cutting tax, fighting woke, and reforming the constitution. So let's have a look at these in turn, starting with tax. Reform have said that they'll raise the minimum income tax threshold from £12,571 to £20,000, and that they'd raise the 40% income tax threshold from £50,000 to £70,000. VAT would similarly be affected, with Reform promising to scrap VAT applied to energy bills. Alongside this, they'd also reduce government spending by £5 in every £100, which would, in total, account for a whopping £50 billion cut in public spending. This, though, hasn't been explained terribly well. They said that every manager across government must find savings, but they didn't provide any more detail about how these savings could be found. To be fair to Reform UK, they do also provide some more ways that this could be funded at the end of their little manifesto, but the largest source of this funding comes from this cost-saving exercise. Anyway, the manifesto then moves on to other more culture-war-y topics. Reform promises to freeze what they call non-essential immigration, detain all asylum seekers and process them offshore, deport foreign criminals as soon as they complete their sentence, scrap the net zero promise, scrap renewable energy subsidies, ban what they call transgender ideology in primary and secondary schools, ban the teaching of critical race theory in schools, leave the European Court of Human Rights, maintain single-sex spaces, and stop what they call the war on motorists. Now, clearly all of these are designed to appeal to disaffected right-wing Tory voters. These are the sorts of voters that tend to back people like Suella Braverman and Lee Anderson, and are frustrated when the senior leadership try to rein them in. With the Tories tearing themselves apart, Reform are trying to capture those on the right of the party who are feeling pushed out by those in the centre. And, well, it's clear from the third category of policies that Reform are hoping to make it harder for the Tories in the future to have influence in politics ever again. Firstly, they want to move to a proportional voting system, which would hurt the established parties, including the Tories, although they don't specify which proportional system they want to move to. Alongside this, they also want to reform the House of Lords, which the Tories have dominance in. Again, they don't actually specify what this really means. The main point, though, is that Reform are keen to demonstrate that they're not in favour of politics as usual, whether this is because of their views on the Constitution, social issues, or tax policy. If you want to keep learning and expanding your knowledge, then I'd recommend you check out Wendover Productions' brilliant series, The Logistics of X. You likely know Wendover already, but in this series they dive deeper into the logistics and operations behind everything from search and rescue operations to ski resorts and coal mining. One episode I think you'd particularly enjoy is their latest, which gets into the logistics of weapons manufacturing, something that's key to a number of topics we discuss regularly in TLDR videos, and something that directly impacts wars and conflicts all around the world. It's a brilliantly researched and thorough series, and it's exclusively available on our streaming service Nebula. As you likely know, Nebula is the service we built with a bunch of our creator friends, and is the home to tons of smart educational content from all of your favourite creators. The best part is that by signing up, you not only get access to exclusive series like The Logistics of X, Modern Conflicts from Real Life Law, or China Actually from Polymatter, it also directly supports TLDR. That's because when you sign up, you contribute to the budgets of these big budget documentaries and help us grow and expand our ambitions. If you want to get more superb context and support TLDR, then if you sign up using the link below, you can support us directly and get Nebula for 40% off their annual plan. That's less than £2 a month. Thanks for your support and for backing Nebula.